She just did something no player in tennis history has ever done to a world number 3, and the world number 1 wasn't even in the building. 9 straight games. Zero mercy. A 20-year-old left-hander from Manila closed out a WTA final by winning every single game left on the board, and by the time the umpire called it, the entire stadium in Washington was on its feet screaming for a name that didn't exist on a trophy list a week earlier. But that's not even the part that should stop you scrolling. The part that should stop you scrolling is where the actual world number 1 was standing while all of this happened, and what she said out loud 16 months before any of it started. Stay with me, because by the end of this video you're going to understand why one brand's biggest star is suddenly fighting for a kit she doesn't even have yet, while a nobody from a country that has never produced a WTA champion just walked in and took the spotlight without asking for it. If this is your first time here, hit subscribe before you go any further, not because I'm asking for a favor, but because this story isn't finished. It's moving in real time, week to week, tournament to tournament, and if you leave now you're going to miss the moment this whole thing detonates. So subscribe, stay, and let's get into it. Let's go back to the beginning, because you need to understand exactly how far this player has come before you understand why what happened in Washington matters so much. 19 months ago, Alexandra Eala was ranked 168 in the world. Nobody outside the Philippines could tell you her name. Then came Miami 2025, a WTA 1000 event, the kind of tournament that chews up unranked players and spits them out in round 1. Instead, Eala walked in as a qualifier and beat 3 Grand Slam champions in a row. Jelena Ostapenko, Madison Keys, Iga Swiatek. 3 consecutive matches, 3 major champions, 1 teenager nobody had scouted properly. That run put her on the radar. It did not, however, guarantee anything that came after it. Because tennis doesn't reward you just for one good week. A month later at Eastbourne, Eala reached her first WTA final and blew 4 championship points. 4. Gone. She lost the 3rd set tiebreak and walked off that court in tears. That kind of collapse follows a player. It sits in the back of their mind every single time a match gets close again. And it very nearly followed her straight into Washington. Here's where the story gets interesting. Washington, early August 2026. The DC Open Final. Eala against Jessica Pegula, world number 3, 3 finals already that season, one of the most composed players on tour. Rain hits the stadium mid-match and suspends play with Pegula up 6-4, 4-3. 1 clean service game from ending Eala's tournament. 1 game from sending her home as a runner-up for the 2nd time in her career. If you're a betting person, you like Pegula in that moment. Everybody did. Then the rain stopped. Monday afternoon, the tarps come off, and something shifts. Eala wins the last 3 games of the 2nd set. Then she doesn't just win the 3rd set, she erases it. 6 games to love. Pegula, a top 3 player in the world, wins 8 total points in an entire set. 8. The final score, 4-6, 6-4, 6-0. 9 straight games from the moment play resumed, with no breaks, no hesitation, nothing that looked like the player who choked away 4 championship points a year earlier. And here's the line that should give you chills. Asked about the pressure of a rain-delayed championship final, Eala basically shrugged it off, said she'd warmed up more times than she could count, that rain delays were just part of her life now, even if the stakes were higher this time. That's not something a coach teaches you to say. That's composure built from every single loss that should have broken her and didn't. She became the first Filipina in the Open era to win a WTA singles title. She cracked the world's top 20 for the first time. And the check that came with it, reported around $250,000, was more than she'd earned across most of her previous seasons combined, cashed in a single week. Now here's where it gets messier. Because while all of this was happening in Washington, the actual world number 1 wasn't there. Aryna Sabalenka, 4-time Grand Slam champion, the longest reigning number 1 outside of Iga Swiatek among active players, had already been eliminated from Wimbledon in straight sets by Naomi Osaka. She skipped Washington entirely. Instead, she was in a Toronto press room the same weekend, talking about a summer she said she'd struggled through, both physically and mentally. Two players, same weekend, two completely different stories. One building a legend in real time. One trying to explain what went wrong. But rewind further, because this is the part that turns the whole story into something closer to prophecy. Back in April 2025, in an interview with ABS-CBN's Dion Castro, Sabalenka herself called Eala born for center court. That wasn't a throwaway compliment. That was the sport's most dominant player publicly identifying a threat 16 months before that threat lifted her first trophy. When the number one in the world scouts you out loud like that, it isn't flattery, it's a warning to everyone else on tour. So now you have a scouting report from the queen of the sport, and a coronation nobody scheduled. Which brings us to the part of this story that has nothing to do with a tennis court and everything to do with a swoosh. Both Eala and Sabalenka are signed to Nike. And here's the detail that's been quietly fueling frustration inside that partnership for over a year. Sabalenka, despite being the face of women's tennis, has largely gone without a fully custom Nike kit. Fans have pointed it out for seasons, generic silhouettes at major slams while other brands hand-seeded players custom looks. Sportico's own tracking of last year's US Open showed Adidas and its Y3 outfitting more seeded players in custom pieces than Nike did. For the sport's biggest Nike athlete, that gap has been impossible to ignore. Sabalenka has been open about wanting the brand to step up. In late 2025, she said fully custom kits could be coming her way in 2027. This year, Nike gave her a designed piece for Roland Garros, a red and black look built around a clay ballet concept, and fans loved it, right up until the same design turned up on another player weeks later. Then came her US Open kit reveal, which drew mixed reactions online. With some fans openly saying it didn't look custom at all. Now put Eala's Nike story next to that. Earlier this year, Nike commissioned a Manila-based artist to embroider the sampaguita, the Philippine national flower, directly into the fabric of a piece designed specifically for Eala at Wimbledon. It sold out. It wasn't just merchandise, it was a cultural statement, and almost nobody in mainstream tennis media caught it in real time. The pattern kept going. Miami, where she toppled 3 major champions. Wimbledon, where the custom sampaguita piece landed. And now Washington, where the trophy arrived less than 48 hours before Nike quietly unveiled her next capsule, already being previewed for her Cincinnati run. Read that timeline back. Nike didn't wait for Eala to become a Grand Slam champion before investing in her like one. It built the narrative in real time, tournament by tournament, while its actual world number one was still waiting on the fully custom deal she'd been promised for 2027. And here's a detail that adds real weight to all of this: Sabalenka herself has been vocal, not just about kits, but about money in general. At the Italian Open this year, she stood in front of reporters and said plainly that players deserve a bigger share of what these tournaments generate, warning that a boycott wasn't off the table if things didn't change. That's a world number one who is actively pushing for more, on every front, at the exact moment a 20-year-old teammate is being built into the brand's next big story without lifting a finger to ask for it. Now, before we go further, I need you to think about what you'd do in Nike's position, because the next stretch of this season is going to force them to answer that question in public. Let's talk numbers for a second, because context matters here. Nike's global revenue sits north of $50 billion a year, roughly double its nearest rival. That scale is exactly why any perceived imbalance in how it treats its athletes gets amplified. When you're that big, every custom kit or lack of one becomes a headline. And headlines are exactly what followed both of these women into the next round of the season. Straight out of Washington, the tour moved to Toronto for a WTA 1000 event, where Eala arrived seated for the first time in her career, sitting in the same half of the draw as Sabalenka. From there, Cincinnati, where Eala's next Nike capsule was already teed up before she played a single competitive point, in the same tournament Sabalenka was set to defend a title in. Then Flushing Meadows, the US Open, where Eala will be seated at a Grand Slam for the very first time, and where Sabalenka will be defending the biggest title of her career. Do you see the collision course forming here? Because I do, and I don't think it's an accident. Here's the part nobody's talking about enough. Jessica Pegula, the player who actually lost that Washington final, is not someone who hands out praise lightly. She's a former world number 3 with a US Open final on her resume and more than 20 wins over top 10 players. Her comments after matches are famously measured, almost clinical. So when she was asked about facing Eala after being run off the court in that third set, her answer was short, blunt, and telling. Not fun to play against. 4 words. From a player who does not say things like that as a courtesy. That's not just a scoreline anymore. That's a scouting report the rest of the tour is now being forced to read, the same way Sabalenka read it 16 months ago and said it out loud before anyone believed her. So here's where this leaves us heading into the biggest stretch of the season. A 20-year-old is walking into Cincinnati and the US Open carrying a flower from her home country stitched into her uniform, backed by a brand that seems to be building a coronation in real time. A 4-time major champion is walking into the same tournament still waiting on the custom deal she was promised, publicly pushing for more money and more respect from the sport she's dominated for years. And somewhere in the middle of all of it is a rivalry that didn't exist a month ago and might define the rest of this season. If Toronto puts them in the same quarter of the draw, who takes it? The world number 1, quietly trying to rebuild her form on a surface that's historically been kind to her? Or the 20-year-old riding the most dominant 9-game stretch women's tennis has seen all year? Drop your prediction in the comments right now, before the draw goes live, because I promise you, whichever way this goes, it is going to change how we talk about both of these players for the rest of the season. And that's exactly why you need to be here when it happens. This story is not over. It's barely started. Cincinnati runs from August 7th through the 18th, and the US Open follows right after, from August 24th through September 7th, the exact tournament where Nike's next move and Sabalenka's title defense collide head-on. If you want every twist covered the second it breaks, the Cincinnati capsule, the Toronto draw, whatever happens between these two on court, subscribe now and turn on notifications, because I am not missing a single moment of this, and neither should you. We're following this all the way to Flushing Meadows. See you in the next one.